The celestial hammer looms over Earth, its massive hull eclipsing the sun. Emperor Zaxthor's ultimatum echoes across global communication channels. Surrender one human for execution or face annihilation. Humanity's unauthorized expansion into Benzite space has drawn the ire of the Galactic Empire, and now Earth teeters on the brink of destruction. World leaders convene in emergency sessions, their faces grim as they debate the unthinkable. Hours pass, filled with heated arguments and tearful pleas. Finally, a decision is reached. Anthony Parker, 28, former Space Marine turned diplomat, is chosen as Earth's sacrificial offering. Parker stands tall as he boards the transport shuttle, his jaw clenched. The ascent to the celestial hammer is swift, each second bringing him closer to his fate. Alien guards, their exoskeletons gleaming, escort him through vast corridors of pulsing technology. In a stark chamber, Parker is stripped of his clothing and dignity. Benzite scientists examine him with cold precision, their instruments probing and scanning. He endures their scrutiny in silence, his military training evident in his stoic demeanor. The Empire's ruling council assembles in a grand hall. Parker is brought before them, naked and vulnerable. Emperor Zaxthor, a towering figure with razored mandibles, regards the human with disdain. The air crackles with tension as the execution proceedings begin. Suddenly, the chamber doors slide open. Princess Sayla enters, her iridescent blue skin shimmering under the harsh lights. All eyes turn to the Emperor's daughter and heir apparent. Her large, mesmerizing eyes lock onto Parker's form. Sayla approaches, her movements fluid and graceful. She circles Parker, her gaze roaming over his muscled frame. The human stands motionless, acutely aware of the alien princess's scrutiny. With undisguised fascination, Sayla reaches out. Her slender fingers trace the contours of Parker's chest, marveling at the warmth and texture of his skin. The contact sends a visible shiver through her body. The princess's skin begins to shift, patterns of color rippling across her surface. To the assembled Benzites, the display is unmistakable, a clear sign of sexual arousal. Emperor Zaxthor observes his daughter's reaction with growing concern. He rises abruptly, mandibles clicking in agitation. With a curt gesture, he halts the proceedings and beckons Sayla to his side. Their private conference is brief but intense. Sayla's voice rises in passionate argument, her gestures emphatic. The Emperor's posture gradually softens, his resistance eroding in the face of his daughter's insistence. Finally, Zaxthor turns to address the council. His voice booms through the chamber, declaring that the human will be spared execution. Instead, Anthony Parker is to become Princess Sayla's personal property, a slave for her to study and use as she sees fit. Parker's expression remains neutral, but a flicker of relief passes through his eyes. Guards flank him once more, this time leading him not to death, but to Sayla's private quarters. The princess follows, her gaze never leaving the human's form. On Earth, leaders receive word that the execution has been postponed. Hope mingles with uncertainty as humanity contemplates its uncertain future in the fate of Anthony Parker, the man who stood naked before an empire and lived to tell the tale. The doors to Princess Sayla's private quarters slid shut behind Anthony Parker, leaving him alone with the alien royal. The room was a stark contrast to the cold utilitarian chambers he had been in before. Soft, bioluminescent panels bathed the space in a calming blue glow, while strange, undulating sculptures adorned the walls. Sayla gestured to a raised platform in the center of the room. "Please, lie down. The medical staff will be here shortly." Parker complied, his military training kicking in as he followed orders without question. Minutes later, a team of Benzite doctors entered, their exoskeletons whirring softly as they approached. The examination was thorough but non-invasive. Handheld devices emitted beams of light that passed through Parker's body, while holographic displays flickered to life, showing detailed scans of his internal organs. Throughout the process, Sayla watched intently, her large eyes never leaving Parker's form. As the last doctor filed out, Sayla stepped closer to the platform. "You may sit up now, Anthony Parker," she said, her voice melodious and unexpectedly clear. Parker's eyes widened in surprise. "You speak English?" Sayla's skin rippled with amusement. Yes, I learned as part of my diplomatic training. I've long been fascinated by your species. Over the next few days, Parker found himself spending increasing amounts of time with the alien princess. Their conversations ranged from Earth's history to the intricacies of human culture. Sela's curiosity seemed insatiable, and Parker found himself opening up more with each passing hour. "Tell me about your world," Sela prompted one evening as they sat in her private garden, surrounded by exotic alien flora. Parker's eyes grew distant as he recalled his home. "Earth is diverse. We have vast oceans, towering mountains, and sprawling cities. But it's the people that make it truly special. Billions of individuals, each with their own dreams and stories." As he spoke, Sela inched closer, her skin changing hues in mesmerizing patterns. Her slender hand brushed against his arm, sending a shiver through both of them. The physical tension between them grew alongside their intellectual connection. Parker found himself captivated by Sela's otherworldly beauty and razor-sharp mind. Despite his situation as a captive, he couldn't deny the attraction he felt. One night, as they discussed the human drive for exploration, Sela's expression grew troubled. "Anthony, there's something you should know," she said, her voice low. "I've been accessing classified reports about Earth. Much of the information used to justify our aggression, it's not accurate." Parker leaned forward, his heart racing. "What do you mean?" Sela's skin darkened with what Parker had come to recognize as distress. "Military hardliners fabricated data to paint humanity as a threat. They want to eliminate potential competition before it arises." The revelation hit Parker like a physical blow. As he processed the information, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Sela rushed to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. "No," she whispered, her voice filled with dread. "Father has ordered increased military presence in your solar system. Your leaders, they're mobilizing for war." Parker's mind raced. "We have to do something. Billions of lives are at stake." Sela nodded, her drive mirroring his own. "We need to convince my father to reconsider, but it won't be easy. General Krasitor and his allies are pushing for invasion. They see you as a threat to my judgment." As they began formulating a plan, the weight of their task settled over them. They would have to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial politics while racing against time to prevent an interstellar war. Sela's hand found Parker's, their fingers intertwining. In that moment, despite the vast differences between their species, they were united in purpose. Together, they would fight to bridge the gap between their worlds and forge a path to peace. As they worked late into the night, the celestial hammer continued its ominous orbit around Earth. In the darkness of space, two unlikely allies prepared to challenge an empire and reshape the future of two civilizations. As Parker and Sela pored over their plans late into the night, an urgent alert chimed from the princess's communication device. Emperor Zaxthor's voice, tinged with uncharacteristic urgency, filled the room. "Sela, your presence is required immediately in the Imperial Council chamber. This is not a request." Exchanging a worried glance with Parker, Sela rose swiftly. "I must go. Stay here and continue gathering evidence. We may need it sooner than we thought." The princess swept from her quarters, leaving Parker alone with their half-formed strategies. As the door sealed shut behind her, he couldn't shake the feeling that events were accelerating beyond their control. Sela strode into the council chamber, her skin rippling with barely suppressed anxiety. The room bristled with tension, council members murmuring in hushed tones. At the center of it all stood General Krasitor, his exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights as he gestured emphatically at a holographic display of Earth. Emperor Zaxthor's mandibles clicked in agitation as he turned to his daughter. "Sela, General Krasitor has presented compelling evidence of an imminent human threat. We are preparing to launch a preemptive strike." Sela's mind raced. This was happening too fast. She stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "Father, respectfully, I must challenge General Krasitor's assessment." The room fell silent as Sela activated her own data pad, projecting the information she and Parker had collected. These reports contain numerous exaggerations and outright fabrications. Humanity poses no immediate threat to our empire. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Council members shouted over one another, some backing Sela's claims, others vehemently supporting the general. Emperor Zaxthor raised his arms, calling for order. Meanwhile, back in Sela's quarters, Parker paced restlessly. A soft chime at the door drew his attention. He approached cautiously, keenly aware of his vulnerable position. The door slid open to reveal a group of junior Benzite officers, led by a female with striking purple markings on her exoskeleton. She stepped forward, her posture tense but determined. "Anthony Parker, I am Lieutenant Vexera. We don't have much time. General Krasistor is planning a coup against the Emperor, using this war as a pretext. We need your help to stop him." Parker's training kicked in, his mind quickly assessing the situation. "What do you need me to do?" Vexara produced a small device. "This will give you access to the ship's communication systems. You must warn Earth of the impending attack. It may be our only chance to prevent this war." Without hesitation, Parker took the device and began transmitting a coded message to Earth's Defense Command. His fingers flew over the alien interface, years of training allowing him to adapt quickly to the unfamiliar technology. Just as the transmission completed, the door burst open. A squad of Benzite soldiers loyal to Krastor stormed in, weapons raised. Parker reacted instinctively. He ducked under the first energy blast, closing the distance to the nearest soldier. His fist connected with the alien's midsection. Finding a weak point in the exoskeleton, the Benzite crumpled. Using the fallen soldier as a shield, Parker grappled with another attacker. His human strength, honed by years of training, proved surprisingly effective against the Benzite physiology. He managed to disarm one soldier, using the alien weapon to incapacitate two more. But the odds were overwhelming. As Parker felled a fourth attacker, a stun blast caught him from behind. His muscles seized, and he collapsed to the floor, consciousness fading. In the council chamber, the debate raged on. Emperor Zaxthor, visibly swayed by Sela's arguments, raised his hand for silence. "In light of this new information, I order a temporary halt to all attack plans. We must investigate these discrepancies before taking any irreversible action." General Krastor's exoskeleton flared an angry red. "My Emperor, you are being manipulated. This human has clouded the princess's judgment. We must strike now, before it's too late." The general's supporters among the Imperial Guard moved suddenly, weapons appearing in their hands. Krasitor's voice boomed through the chamber. "I hereby declare Emperor Zaxthor unfit to rule. For the safety of our empire, I am assuming control." Sela reacted with lightning speed. She vaulted over the council table, her lithe form twisting in midair to avoid energy blasts. Landing beside her father, she activated a personal shield generator, the blue field flickering to life just in time to deflect a barrage of shots. The council chamber erupted into a battleground. Loyal guards clashed with Krasitor's supporters, energy weapons scorching the ornate walls. Sela fought with unexpected ferocity, her diplomatic training giving way to a warrior's instinct. As the battle raged, Parker regained consciousness. He found himself being dragged through the corridors of the Celestial Hammer, the grip of Benzite soldiers unyielding. They entered a vast chamber filled with pulsing technology, the ship's command center. General Krastor stood at the main control console, his exoskeleton now a deep, menacing crimson. He turned as Parker was brought before him, mandibles clicking in fury. "You!" Krastor snarled, raising an energy pistol. "You've interfered with the destiny of the Benzite Empire for the last time." Just as the general's finger tightened on the trigger, the command center doors exploded inward. Lieutenant Vexara and her band of dissenters poured in, their weapons trained on Krasistor and his loyalists. In the chaos that followed, Parker broke free from his captors. He lunged at Krasistor, grappling with the much larger alien. They struggled near the main control console, each trying to gain the upper hand. Krastor, in a last desperate move, reached for the weapons controls. "If I can't have the Empire, I'll destroy it all," he roared. Parker strained against the general's inhuman strength, managing to knock his arm aside just as Krasitor fired. The misdirected energy burst struck a critical system, sending a shudder through the entire ship. Alarms blared as the celestial hammer shook violently. Gravity fluctuated, sending combatants floating momentarily before crashing back to the floor. Emergency lights bathed the command center in an eerie red glow. As Krasitor struggled to regain his footing, Parker seized the opportunity. He delivered a powerful blow to the general's midsection, finally incapacitating him. Suddenly, the command center doors slid open once more. Princess Sela stood in the entrance, her skin pulsing with a mix of battle readiness and relief at seeing Parker alive. Her eyes quickly took in the scene. Krasitor subdued, Vexara's forces securing the room, and Parker at the center of it all. Their gazes locked, 1,000 unspoken words passing between them in an instant. But there was no time for reunion. The ship groaned ominously around them, a chilling reminder that their struggles were far from finished. Sela strode purposefully into the command center, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to stabilize the ship and prevent any further damage." And then, she paused, looking from Parker to the subdued Krasitor. "We have a lot to discuss about the future of our two species." As Benzites and the lone humans scrambled to control the deteriorating situation, the celestial hammer drifted in space, its fate, and that of two civilizations, hanging in the balance. Balance. As alarms blared and emergency lights bathed the command center in an eerie red glow, Princess Sela's voice cut through the chaos with an authority that belied her years. "Secure General Krasitor immediately," she ordered, her skin pulsing with a mix of dedication and relief. Lieutenant Vexara and her loyalists sprang into action, swiftly subduing the disgraced general and binding his limbs with energy restraints. Parker, still catching his breath from the struggle, turned his attention to the ship's failing systems. The celestial hammer shuddered ominously, and he could hear the distinct whine of overtaxed power conduits. "Your Highness," he called out to Sela, "I can help stabilize the ship. I've studied your systems during my time here." Sela hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting between Parker and the chaotic display of emergency readouts. Before she could respond, the command center doors slid open once more, revealing Emperor Zaxthor flanked by a contingent of loyal guards. The Emperor's exoskeleton flickered with a pattern that Parker had come to recognize as a mix of anger and concern. His multifaceted eyes swept the room, taking in the subdued Krasitor and the human standing resolutely beside his daughter. "What is the meaning of this?" Zaxthor demanded, his voice resonating with imperial authority. Sela stepped forward, her posture conveying both respect and urgency. "Father, General Krasitor attempted a coup. He's been subdued, but the ship sustained damage in the process. We need to act quickly to prevent a catastrophic meltdown." The Emperor's gaze settled on Parker. "And why is the human prisoner unrestrained?" Before Sela could answer, a violent tremor shook the ship. Sparks erupted from a nearby console, and the gravity fluctuated wildly for a moment. Parker seized the opportunity. "Your Majesty, I can help. I've been studying Benzite technology, and I believe I can assist your engineers in stabilizing the power core." Emperor Zaxthor's mandibles clicked in agitation, but another alarming surge in the ship's systems seemed to make the decision for him. "Very well," he said reluctantly, "but you will be closely monitored." With a nod from the Emperor, Parker rushed to the main engineering console. His fingers flew over the alien interface, his mind racing to apply what he'd learned during his captivity. Benzite engineers crowded around him, initially skeptical, but soon working in concert as Parker's quick thinking began to yield results. "Reroute power from the tertiary systems," Parker instructed, his voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "We need to take the strain off the main reactor." As the Benzite crew followed his lead, the ship's violent shuddering began to subside. Emergency klaxons fell silent one by one, and the oppressive red lighting gave way to the normal illumination of the command center. Emperor Zaxthor watched the proceedings with a mix of surprise and grudging admiration. As the immediate crisis passed, he turned to Sela and Parker. "I want a full explanation for these events," he declared, "and I want it now." Over the next hour, Sela and Parker presented their evidence of the falsified reports and the true nature of human expansion. They detailed Krasitor's plot and the events that had led to the coup attempt. The Emperor listened in stony silence, his exoskeleton shifting through a range of colors as he processed the information. "This deception, it goes deeper than I could have imagined," Zaxthor finally said, his voice heavy with the weight of realization. A full investigation must be launched immediately. As the Emperor issued orders for a comprehensive review of the military's actions, Parker found himself in an unexpected position. No longer a prisoner, he was now viewed as a valuable ally by many of the Benzites on board. Over the following days, he worked tirelessly alongside the ship's engineers, helping to repair the damage caused during the coup attempt. Sayla watched Parker's integration into the ship's operations with a mix of pride and growing affection. She found reasons to visit the areas where he was working, ostensibly to oversee the repairs but increasingly to spend time in his company. One evening, as Parker was finishing up a repair on a secondary power coupling, Sayla approached him. "I've arranged for us to have a private meeting," she said, her skin shimmering with what Parker now recognized as excitement, "to discuss cultural exchange." Parker felt a flutter in his chest, knowing that cultural exchange had become their code for the personal conversations they both craved. "I look forward to it, Your Highness," he replied, trying to keep his voice neutral despite the anticipation he felt. As they made their way to Sayla's private chambers, neither of them noticed the narrowed eyes of High Counselor Drazikon watching their departure. The Benzite official's exoskeleton darkened with disapproval as he observed the growing closeness between the human and the princess. In her quarters, Sayla and Parker found themselves standing closer than protocol would normally allow. The air between them seemed charged with possibility. "Anthony," Sayla began, using his first name in the privacy of her chambers, "I can't help but feel that your presence here, despite the circumstances that brought you to us, might be the key to a new era for both our peoples." Parker nodded, acutely aware of the complex feelings swirling within him. "I believe you're right, Sayla, but I also can't ignore the personal connection I feel growing between us." As their eyes met, the tension that had been building for weeks seemed to reach a breaking point. Sayla's hand reached out, her fingers intertwining with Parker's. The sensation of her alien skin against his sent a shiver through them both. Just as they began to lean towards each other, a chime from Sayla's communication device shattered the moment. The princess reluctantly pulled away, activating the holographic display. Lieutenant Vexara's image appeared, her expression urgent. "Your Highness, we've received a transmission from Earth. They've acknowledged the Emperor's request for a diplomatic meeting. Preparations are already underway." As Sayla absorbed this news, Parker felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and he found himself at the center of it all. As he looked at Sayla, he realized that their personal relationship might be the key to bridging the gap between their species or the spark that could ignite an even greater conflict. The celestial hammer hummed around them, its course now set for Earth in a historic encounter that would shape the future of both humanity and the Benzite Empire. The celestial hammer surged through space, its sleek form cutting a path towards Earth. As the ship entered the planet's orbit, a palpable tension filled the air. Emperor Zaxthor stood in the command center, his exoskeleton shifting through shades of blue and green, reflecting the mix of anticipation and anxiety he felt. Princess Sayla and Anthony Parker stood nearby, their bodies close but not quite touching. They exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. The weight of their responsibility to bridge the gap between two civilizations pressed heavily upon their shoulders. "We're initiating final approach procedures," announced the Benzite pilot, his voice steady despite the historic nature of their mission. Emperor Zaxthor turned to address the assembled diplomatic party. "The future of our species rests on the outcome of these talks," he intoned gravely. "We must not fail." As the group made their way to the shuttle bay, High Counselor Drazikon watched from the shadows, his eyes narrowed in contempt. He tapped a concealed communicator on his wrist, whispering, "Proceed with the plan." The Imperial shuttle detached from the celestial hammer, its engines humming as it began its descent towards Earth. Parker gazed out the viewport, his heart racing at the sight of his home planet growing larger. Suddenly, the shuttle lurched violently. Alarms blared as the pilot fought with the controls. "We've lost navigation," the pilot shouted, his exoskeleton flashing urgent patterns of distress. Parker sprang into action, years of space marine training taking over. He pushed past the panicking Benzite officials to reach the cockpit. "I can help," he said, sliding into the co-pilot's seat. "We need to execute an emergency landing protocol." The shuttle plummeted through Earth's atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot from the friction. Parker and the Benzite pilot worked in tandem, their fingers flying over the alien controls. "There!" Parker pointed to a clearing in the dense forest below. "It's our best shot." The shuttle screamed towards the ground, trees whipping past at breakneck speed. With a bone-jarring impact, it slammed into the earth, skidding through the underbrush before coming to a smoking halt. For a moment, silence reigned. Then the emergency hatch hissed open, and Parker emerged, helping a dazed Princess Sela out of the wreckage. The Benzite diplomats followed, their exoskeletons displaying a cacophony of distressed colors. Emperor Zaxthor was the last to exit, supported by 2 guards. He stumbled, collapsing to the ground with a pained groan. "Father!" Sela cried, rushing to his side. Parker knelt beside them, his trained eye assessing the Emperor's injuries. "He's hurt badly," Parker said, his voice low. "We need to stabilize him." As night fell, the forest came alive with unfamiliar sounds. The Benzites huddled close to the shuttle, unnerved by the alien environment. Parker took charge, organizing the group and setting up a makeshift camp. "We need to establish a perimeter," he instructed, handing out emergency beacons from the shuttle's survival kit. "These will help any rescue teams locate us." Sela worked alongside him, her royal demeanor replaced by a determined focus. Together, they gathered wood for a fire and fashioned crude shelters from the shuttle's debris. As Parker tended to the Emperor's wounds, using a combination of Benzite medical technology and his own field medicine knowledge, Zaxthor watched him with newfound respect. "Perhaps," the Emperor wheezed, "there is more to your species than we realized." On board the Celestial Hammer, Lieutenant Vexera frowned at her console. The shuttle's transponder had gone dark, and all attempts at communication had failed. As she initiated a scan of the ship's logs, a flashing alert caught her eye. "Unauthorized access to the shuttle's systems?" she muttered, her suspicions growing. She tapped her communicator, summoning a trusted team of officers. "Meet me in the security hub. We have a situation." Back on Earth, Parker and Sela ventured away from the camp, scouting the area for any signs of civilization. As they pushed through the dense undergrowth, their hands brushed against each other. They paused, the tension between them electric. "Anthony," Sela began, her skin pulsing with a mix of emotions. Her words were cut short as Parker pulled her close, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. For a moment, the weight of their responsibilities melted away, leaving only the connection between them. A sudden rustle in the bushes startled them apart. Parker tensed, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. From the foliage emerged a group of wide-eyed humans, their hunting gear and camouflage clothing marking them as locals. "Holy shit!" one of the men exclaimed, his rifle trained on Sela. "What the hell is that?" Parker stepped forward, his hands raised placatingly. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. "We're not here to harm anyone. We need help." As Parker explained the situation, the hunters' fear gave way to curiosity. They lowered their weapons, approaching Sela with cautious wonder. "You're really from another planet?" a young woman asked, her eyes wide with amazement. Sela nodded, her translator conveying her words. "We are called the Benzite. We came seeking peace." The unexpected encounter marked the first unofficial meeting between ordinary humans and Benzites. As the two groups conversed, sharing stories and examining each other's equipment, the seeds of understanding began to take root. Unbeknownst to them, high above in the Celestial Hammer's orbit, Drazikon's agents prepared for their final assault. A cloaked vessel detached from the ship's underbelly, descending silently towards the crash site. In the growing dawn light, Parker's trained senses picked up subtle signs of approach. His body tensed, years of combat experience screaming danger. "Sela," he whispered urgently, "we've got company." "Company." Parker's voice was low and urgent. He scanned the tree line, his muscles tense and ready for action. Sela's skin rippled with a pattern that Parker had come to recognize as alertness. "How many?" she whispered, her hand moving to the benzite energy weapon at her hip. "Can't tell yet," Parker replied, his eyes never leaving the forest. "But they're moving with purpose. We need to warn the others." They rushed back to the makeshift camp, where the injured Emperor Zaxthor lay surrounded by the human hunters and benzite diplomats. Parker's mind raced, formulating a plan. "We've got incoming hostiles," he announced, his voice carrying the authority of his military training. "Everyone needs to take cover and prepare for a fight." The camp burst into action. The human hunters, led by a woman named Sarah, quickly grasped the gravity of the situation. "We know these woods," Sarah said, hefting her rifle. "We can help set up defenses." Parker nodded, grateful for the unexpected allies. "Good. We'll need every advantage we can get." Working swiftly, Parker and Sela coordinated their efforts. They used fallen branches and shuttle debris to create makeshift barriers, while Sarah and her team dug shallow trenches and set up natural camouflage. Sela repurposed damaged components from the shuttle, her fingers moving with practiced precision. "I can create a rudimentary energy barrier," she explained, connecting wires and circuits. "It won't stop them, but it might slow them down." As dawn broke, casting long shadows through the trees, the first wave of Drazikon's agents emerged from the forest. Parker counted at least a dozen heavily armed benzites, their exoskeletons a uniform black that seemed to absorb the early morning light. "Hold your fire," Parker whispered to the defenders. "Wait for my signal." The assassins moved cautiously, unaware that their element of surprise had been lost. As they approached the first line of defenses, Parker gave a sharp nod to Sela. She activated her makeshift device, and a shimmering field of energy sprang to life between the trees. The leading benzites stumbled, momentarily disoriented by the unexpected barrier. "Now!" Parker shouted. The forest erupted in chaos. Energy weapons and conventional firearms blazed in unison as the defenders opened fire. The assassins, caught off guard, scrambled for cover. Parker moved with fluid efficiency, years of combat experience guiding his actions. He ducked behind a fallen log, squeezing off precise shots that found their mark in the vulnerable joints of benzite exoskeletons. Beside him, Sela proved herself a formidable fighter. Her Royal Guard training shone through as she wielded her energy weapon with deadly accuracy, her movements graceful even in the heat of battle. The human hunters, initially hesitant, quickly adapted to the alien conflict. Sarah's voice rang out, coordinating their efforts. "Jake, Martinez, flank left! Keep them pinned down!" As the battle raged, a new sound cut through the chaos, the whine of approaching engines. Parker's heart leapt as he recognized the familiar roar of human military aircraft mixed with the higher-pitched hum of benzite shuttles. "Reinforcements!" he called out, his voice carrying a note of triumph. The assassins, realizing their mission was compromised, began a frantic retreat. Parker and Sela led a group in pursuit, determined not to let them escape. They chased the fleeing benzites deeper into the forest, leaping over fallen trees and ducking under low-hanging branches. Parker's lungs burned with exertion, but he pushed on, acutely aware of Sela keeping pace beside him. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath their feet. Parker and Sela tumbled down a steep embankment, rolling to a stop in front of a moss-covered metal door set into the hillside. "What is this?" Sela asked, her translator struggling to keep up with her rapid breathing. Parker ran his hand over the rusted surface, feeling the familiar contours of human engineering. "It's a bunker," he replied, a plan forming in his mind. "An old military installation, and it might be our best chance." As the sounds of pursuit grew closer, Parker worked to pry open the ancient door. With a groan of protesting metal, it swung inward, revealing a dark interior that smelled of dust and forgotten secrets. They slipped inside, closing the door behind them. Parker fumbled in the darkness until his hand found a familiar shape, a control panel. With a silent prayer, he flipped the switch. Ancient lights flickered to life, illuminating a space filled with outdated but still recognizable military equipment. Sela's eyes widened as she took in the human technology, so different from the sleek designs of the Benzite Empire. "Can you use this?" she asked, gesturing to the rows of controls and monitors. Parker grinned, a fierce light in his eyes. "Oh, I can do more than use it. I can turn it against them." As the assassins closed in on the bunker, Parker's fingers flew over the controls, bringing long dormant systems back to life. Outside, hidden turrets emerged from the forest floor, their targeting systems locking onto the approaching benzites. Sela watched in amazement as Parker coordinated the bunker's defenses, his understanding of human military tactics merging seamlessly with his knowledge of benzite vulnerabilities. The forest around them erupted in a symphony of weapons fire as the ancient human defenses engaged the benzite assassins. Parker and Sela worked in perfect harmony, calling out targets and adjusting the bunker's systems to counter each new threat. As the last of the assassins fell, a new sound reached their ears, the unmistakable approach of the joint human benzite rescue force. Parker and Sela emerged from the bunker, their hands intertwined to face the next chapter in their intertwined destinies. The forest clearing was now a hive of activity, with human and benzite forces securing the area. As medical teams tended to the injured Emperor Zaxthor, Parker and Sela made their way through the controlled chaos, aware of the eyes that followed their every move. They approached the makeshift command post, where human military leaders and benzite officials huddled around holographic displays. The tension in the air was palpable as two worlds collided in this unexpected battlefield. Parker took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He squeezed Sela's hand, drawing strength from her presence. Together, they stepped forward to address the assembled leaders, knowing that their next words could shape the future of both their species. As Parker and Sela approached the assembled leaders, a hush fell over the crowd. The weight of history pressed down upon them, the future of two worlds balanced on the edge of a knife. Parker cleared his throat, his voice steady as he addressed the joint assembly. Distinguished leaders of Earth and the Benzite Empire, we stand before you today as living proof of what our two species can achieve together. Sela continued, her skin pulsing with a mix of purpose and hope. Our differences are many, but our shared values, courage, loyalty, and the pursuit of peace, unite us in ways we never imagined possible. As they recounted their harrowing experiences, from the crash landing to the battle against Drazikon's assassins, the assembly listened with rapt attention. Parker described the human hunters who came to their aid, while Sela highlighted the ingenuity of Parker's use of the ancient human bunker. It was not strength alone that allowed us to prevail, Parker said, his eyes scanning the room. It was our ability to adapt, to combine our unique skills and technologies. Sela nodded, her hand finding Parker's. Together, we are more than the sum of our parts. We propose a formal alliance between our peoples, one that will usher in a new era of peace and prosperity for both our worlds. Their words hung in the air, electrifying the atmosphere. Earth's leaders leaned forward, eyes bright with the possibilities of advanced benzite technology. Many of the benzite officials, however, shifted uncomfortably, their skin patterns betraying their unease. Outside the facility, the first sounds of unrest began to filter through. Angry voices rose in a cacophony of protest, human and benzite alike. Security forces moved swiftly to establish a protective cordon around the building. Inside, the debate raged on. An Earth representative stood, her voice filled with enthusiasm. The potential benefits of this alliance are immeasurable. We could make unprecedented advancements in medicine, energy production, space travel. She was cut off by a benzite official, his skin flushed dark with agitation. At what cost? Our culture has thrived for millennia. We cannot risk diluting our ways, our very essence, for the sake of this unprecedented fraternization. The argument was interrupted by a commotion at the rear of the hall. Lieutenant Vexara burst through the doors, her normally composed demeanor shattered by urgency. "Your Imperial Majesty," she called out, addressing Emperor Zaxthor directly. "We have a critical situation. High Counselor Drazikon has rallied a significant portion of the fleet. They've broken formation and are on an attack vector for Earth." The room erupted into chaos. Human officials demanded immediate action, while benzite leaders argued amongst themselves, accusations of treachery flying back and forth. Emperor Zaxthor, still bearing the marks of his recent injuries, rose slowly to his feet. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the benzite ruler. "We stand at a crossroads," he began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of imperial authority. Our empire faces a threat from within, while our newfound allies face annihilation. There is only one path forward. He turned to face the human delegation. In the name of the Benzite Empire, I formally propose an immediate military alliance between our peoples. Together, we must stand against Drazkon's madness and preserve the future we have glimpsed here today. The assembly exploded into a flurry of activity. Votes were cast, orders were relayed, and within moments, the combined might of Earth's space fleet and the loyal Benzite ships were mobilizing for war. Parker felt a familiar rush of adrenaline course through his veins. He turned to Sayla, seeing the same mix of fear and commitment in her eyes that he felt in his heart. I need to be out there, he said, his training as a space marine taking over. Sayla nodded, her hand tightening around his. We need to be out there, together. As if in answer to their unspoken request, a young human officer approached them, snapping a crisp salute. Commander Parker, Princess Sayla, your presence is requested in the command center immediately. We're assembling a joint strike force to neutralize Drazkon. They followed the officer through a series of secure corridors, emerging into a state-of-the-art command center. Holographic displays showed the unfolding space battle above Earth, Drazkon's rebel fleet engaging with the hastily assembled defense force. A grizzled human admiral turned to them as they entered. Parker, we need your expertise. You'll be leading a strike team to board Drazkon's flagship and take him out. It's our best shot at ending this quickly. Parker nodded, his mind already racing through tactical scenarios. I'll need a team of our best, both human and Benzite. You'll have it, the Admiral replied, then hesitated as his gaze fell on Sayla. Princess, with all due respect, perhaps it would be safer if you— I'm going, Sayla interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. My knowledge of Benzite ship systems will be crucial to the mission's success. The Admiral looked to Parker, who simply nodded. She's right. We do this together. As the strike team assembled and final preparations were made, Parker and Sayla found a moment alone. They stood before a viewport, watching as flashes of weapons fire illuminated Earth's orbit. No matter what happens up there, Parker said softly, I want you to know. Sayla placed a finger against his lips, silencing him. I know, she said, her skin glowing with an intensity Parker had never seen before. And when this is over, we'll have all the time in the world to say it properly. A call came over the intercom, summoning the strike team to the launch bay. Parker and Sayla shared one last look, an entire universe of unspoken emotions passing between them. Then, with purpose in their steps, they moved to join their team. As they boarded the assault shuttle, Parker felt the familiar weight of his combat armor, the reassuring presence of Sayla at his side. The shuttle's engines roared to life, carrying them up towards the chaotic battle that would decide the fate of two worlds. Through the viewscreen, Parker watched as human and Benzite ships fought side by side against Drazkon's forces. The Celestial Hammer, now under Vexara's command, cut through the rebel lines with deadly precision, clearing a path for the strike team's approach. All right, team, Parker called out, his voice steady despite the maelstrom outside. We've got one shot at this. Let's make it count. The shuttle accelerated, weaving through the debris-filled space towards Drazkon's flagship. As they closed in on their target, Parker felt Sayla's hand find his. In that touch, he found all the strength and purpose he needed. The shuttle's pilot called out, 30 seconds to breach point. Parker unholstered his weapon, every muscle tense and ready for action. Beside him, Sayla did the same, her Benzite energy pistol humming with power. Remember, Parker said to his team, a mix of human and Benzite soldiers united in purpose. We're fighting for more than just victory. We're fighting for a future where our peoples stand together. The shuttle shuddered as it made contact with Drazkon's flagship. Cutting torches flared to life, carving an entrance into the enemy vessel. Breach successful, the pilot called out. Go, go, go! Parker and Sayla led the charge, bursting through the newly created opening and into the unknown depths of Drazkon's ship. The future of Earth, the Benzite Empire, and their own intertwined destinies hung in the balance as they plunged into the heart of enemy territory. The strike team moved swiftly through the dimly lit corridors of Drazkon's flagship, their footsteps echoing ominously in the metallic passageways. Parker led the way, his weapon at the ready, with Sela close behind, her benzite senses on high alert for any sign of danger. As they approached the final stretch leading to Drazakhan's command center, Parker held up a closed fist, signaling the team to halt. Something wasn't right. The air around them began to shimmer, and within seconds, a dense, swirling fog filled the corridor. "Defensive countermeasures," Sela whispered, her skin pulsing with concern. "This fog is designed to disorient intruders." Parker's mind raced, assessing the situation. He reached for his equipment belt, retrieving a small multi-tool. With practiced efficiency, he began to modify the tool, connecting it to his and Sela's breathing apparatus. "What are you doing?" Sela asked, watching his hands work with precision. "Improvising," Parker replied, his voice low. "This should filter out some of the fog, give us an edge." As the makeshift air filtration devices activated, the fog thinned slightly around them, allowing for improved visibility. Parker nodded to Sela, and they pressed forward. Their progress slowed but steady. The sound of weapons fire erupted ahead, growing louder as they neared the command center's outer chamber. Parker raised his hand, signaling the team to approach with caution. As they rounded the corner, they encountered an unexpected sight. A group of benzite officers were engaged in a fierce firefight with Drazakhan's personal guard. At the center of the fray stood a commanding figure, his tactical movements precise and unpredictable. As if sensing their presence, he turned, his eyes locking onto Parker and Sela. "Commander Zexatral," Sela breathed, recognition dawning on her face. The benzite commander quickly made his way to them, ducking laser fire. "Princess Sela, Commander Parker," he greeted them, his voice urgent. "We've infiltrated the ship, but the situation is dire. Drazakhan has activated the self-destruct sequence. He intends to take Earth with him." Parker's eyes sharp. "How long do we have?" "Minutes at most," Zexatral replied. "We need to breach the command center now." Parker surveyed the battlefield, his tactical mind formulating a plan. "We'll create a diversion at the main entrance," he said, turning to his team. "Human explosives paired with benzite energy weapons should give us the chaos we need." Sela's eyes lit up with understanding. "While they're distracted, we can use the ventilation system to flank Drazakhan's position." Zexatral nodded approvingly. "A bold strategy. We'll provide cover." As the Joint Strike Team moved into position, Parker and Sela located a nearby ventilation grate. Working together, they quickly removed it and slipped inside the narrow shaft. The confined space forced them close together as they crawled through the ship's innards. In the dim emergency lighting, Parker could see the tenacity etched on Sela's face, her skin shimmering with a mix of adrenaline and something deeper. They paused for a moment, their eyes meeting in the darkness. Without a word, Sela reached out, her hand gently caressing Parker's cheek. The gesture spoke volumes, conveying fear, hope, and unspoken feelings. Parker leaned into her touch, his voice barely a whisper. "Whatever happens, Sela, She silenced him with a finger to his lips. "I know," she said softly. "Me too." The moment passed, but its impact lingered, strengthening their purpose. They continued forward, the sounds of battle growing louder as they neared their destination. Parker peered through a grate, spotting Drazakhan at a central console. With a nod to Sela, he kicked the grate open and leapt into the command center, catching the benzite rebel leader off guard. Chaos erupted as Parker engaged Drazakhan in close-quarters combat. The two warriors clashed, their movements a blur of human and benzite fighting styles. Sela sprinted for the main computer, her fingers flying over the controls as she attempted to abort the self-destruct sequence. "Parker!" Sela called out, her voice tight with tension. "I can't deactivate it. We have less than 5 minutes." Drazakhan laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Your efforts are futile. Earth will fall, and a new benzite empire will rise from its ashes." As they grappled, Drazakhan activated a personal force field, the shimmering energy barrier giving him a momentary advantage. Parker stumbled back, his mind racing for a solution. His eyes darted around the room, landing on a damaged coolant pipe. In a flash of inspiration, Parker maneuvered the fight, positioning Drazakhan in front of the leaking pipe. With a powerful kick, he ruptured it further, sending a spray of supercooled liquid onto the force field. The rapid temperature change created instability in the energy barrier. Parker seized the opportunity, charging forward and breaking through the weakened field. His fist connected with Drazikon's jaw, sending the Benzite leader crashing to the ground, unconscious. "Sela, status!" Parker called out, securing Drazikon. "The encryption is unlike anything I've seen," Sela replied, her fingers still working furiously. "It's a hybrid of old and new Benzite technology." Parker joined her at the console, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar symbols. "Wait," he said, pointing to a section of code. "That sequence, it's similar to human failsafe protocols. Try—" Sela's hands moved with renewed purpose, incorporating Parker's insights. The screen flashed and a countdown appeared. 3 seconds. 2, 1. The room fell silent as the self-destruct sequence aborted. Parker and Sela exhaled in unison, the weight of their near miss hanging heavily in the air. Their relief was short-lived as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The damage from the battle and the partially initiated self-destruct sequence had taken its toll. The flagship was breaking apart. Parker keyed the ship's communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention all forces. This is Commander Anthony Parker. High Counselor Drazikon has been captured, and his flagship is compromised. Stand down immediately." As confusion spread through the rebel fleet, Parker turned to Sela. "We need to evacuate, now." They raced through the corridors, the ship groaning and shuddering around them. They encountered pockets of both loyal and rebel Benzite crew members, disoriented and panicked. "Follow us," Parker shouted, gesturing towards the escape pods. "This ship is going down. We need to work together if we want to survive." Sela echoed his words in Benzite, her voice carrying the authority of her royal lineage. Crew members fell in line behind them, previous allegiances forgotten in the face of imminent danger. They reached the hangar bay, finding it in chaos. Commander Zextral was there coordinating the evacuation efforts. "The last shuttles are prepping for launch," he called out to Parker and Sela. "We don't have much time." As they ushered the remaining crew members onto the shuttles, a massive explosion rocked the ship. Parker stumbled, nearly falling, but Sela caught him, her strength surprising him once again. "Come on," she said, pulling him towards the final shuttle. "Our work isn't done yet." They boarded just as the hangar bay doors began to buckle. The shuttle's engines roared to life, propelling them into space. Through the view screen, they watched as Drazikon's flagship broke apart, debris scattering across the battlefield. Parker and Sela stood side by side, their hands finding each other almost unconsciously. The destruction of the rebel leader's ship marked a turning point in the battle, but they knew the real challenges lay ahead. As the shuttle streaked towards the safety of the Allied fleet, Parker turned to Sela. "Ready to make history?" he asked, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Sela's skin pulsed with tenacity and affection. "With you? Always." The shuttle banked, revealing Earth floating serenely against the backdrop of space. For Parker and Sela, it wasn't just a planet. It was the promise of a future where their two species could stand united. And they were prepared to fight for that future, regardless of the cost. Challenges that lay ahead. As the shuttle approached the celestial hammer, Parker and Sela exchanged a determined look, knowing their work was far from finished. The docking procedure was swift and efficient, a testament to the growing cooperation between human and Benzite crews. As the airlock hissed open, Parker and Sela were greeted by a flurry of activity. Crew members of both species rushed about, coordinating efforts to manage the influx of evacuees from Drazikon's destroyed flagship. "Commander Parker, Princess Sela," a young Benzite officer called out, his skin pulsing with urgency. "Your presence is required in the war room immediately. The Emperor awaits." Without hesitation, they followed the officer through the sleek corridors of the Celestial Hammer. The ship's design was a marvel of Benzite engineering, its sweeping lines and advanced technology a stark contrast to the utilitarian human vessels Parker was accustomed to. As they entered the war room, Parker was struck by the gravity of the moment. Emperor Zaxthor stood at the center of the room, his regal bearing evident despite the visible signs of his recent injuries. Surrounding him were the highest-ranking officials of both the Benzite Imperial Fleet and Earth Military Command. Lieutenant Vexara, her posture rigid with formality, nodded to Parker and Selah as they approached. The holographic displays filling the room painted a chaotic picture of the ongoing battle around Earth. Emperor Zaxthor's voice, though weakened, carried the weight of his authority. Commander Parker, Princess Selah, your actions have turned the tide of this conflict. The destruction of Drazikon's flagship has left the rebels in disarray, but a significant portion of their fleet remains combat-ready. Parker's mind raced, assessing the tactical situation displayed before them. The Emperor continued, his gaze fixed on Parker. Your unconventional tactics and courage have proven invaluable. It is time we recognize this formally. A hush fell over the room as Emperor Zaxthor stepped forward. Commander Anthony Parker, I hereby appoint you as special advisor to the Benzite Imperial Fleet. Never before has a human held such a position, but these unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. Parker stood tall, the weight of this historic moment not lost on him. I am honored, Your Majesty. I will do everything in my power to bring this conflict to a swift end and strengthen the bonds between our people. With his new authority, Parker turned to the holographic display, his tactical mind already formulating a strategy. We need to end this quickly and decisively, he began, manipulating the hologram to highlight key areas of the battlefield. I propose we use Earth's more numerous but less advanced ships as a distraction. Selah stepped forward, her eyes alight with understanding. While the rebels are occupied, a small team of elite Benzite vessels could perform precision strikes on their command and control systems. Parker nodded, impressed once again by Selah's quick thinking. Exactly. We'll target their communications arrays and power distribution nodes. Without central coordination, their fleet will be vulnerable to a coordinated assault. Selah added, I can provide details on Benzite military protocols that will increase our chances of success. There are specific frequencies and encryption methods the rebels are likely using. The room buzzed with energy as human and Benzite officers alike recognized the potential of this plan. Emperor Zaxthor gave his approval with a solemn nod. Make it so. As the combined fleet moved to implement their strategy, Parker and Selah were pulled aside by Lieutenant Vexara. There's more, she said, her voice low. We've identified the rebels' secondary command ship. We need a special operations team to board and capture it. The intelligence we could gain would be invaluable. Parker's eyes met Selah's, a silent understanding passing between them. We'll lead the team, he said without hesitation. Within minutes, they were aboard a sleek Benzite stealth shuttle, joined by a hand-picked team of human and Benzite operatives. As the shuttle detached from the celestial hammer, its cloaking technology rendering it invisible to both sensors and the naked eye, Parker found himself alone with Selah in the cockpit. The close quarters and the weight of their mission seemed to intensify the connection between them. Selah's skin shimmered with a complex mix of emotions, grit, fear, and something deeper that made Parker's heart race. Selah, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. She silenced him with a look, her eyes conveying everything words could not. In one fluid motion, she closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a passionate embrace. The kiss was brief but intense, leaving them both breathless. For luck, Selah said with a slight smile as she pulled away. Parker nodded, his focus sharpening as he turned back to the shuttle's controls. Let's finish this. As they approached the rebel command ship, the reality of their mission set in. Parker guided the shuttle towards a rarely used docking port, relying on Selah's intimate knowledge of Benzite ship designs. The moment they breached the airlock, it became clear this wouldn't be a simple operation. The rebels had adapted their internal defenses, combining Benzite technology with tactics that seemed inspired by human military doctrine. Parker signaled his team to take cover as a barrage of energy weapons fire erupted from a fortified position down the corridor. They've been studying us, he muttered, assessing the situation. Selah's fingers flew over a nearby control panel, her expertise in Benzite systems proving invaluable. I'm into their internal sensors, she announced. We have an advantage, but... Her words were cut short as alarms blared throughout the ship. Sections of the corridor began to fill with a thick, paralyzing gas that affected both humans and benzites. "Everyone, masks on!" Parker shouted, his mind racing back to their encounter with the disorienting fog on Drazikon's ship. Quickly, he began fashioning makeshift rebreathers from materials scavenged from nearby panels and their own equipment. As they pushed forward through the ship's labyrinthine corridors, Parker's improvised solution allowed them to navigate the gas-filled sections while the rebel defenders struggled with their own defenses. They fought their way through pockets of resistance, the human and benzite members of their team working in perfect synchronization. Parker's Space Marine training complemented the unique abilities of his benzite comrades, creating a formidable force. Finally, they reached the ship's data core, only to find it rigged with explosives. Sela examined the setup, her expression grim. "Disarming this would take too long. We're running out of time." Parker's eyes darted around the room, assessing their options. A plan formed in his mind, bold, risky, but potentially game-changing. "We're taking the entire core," he announced. "Explosives and all." Sela's eyes widened, but she nodded in understanding. "We'll need a diversion. Take half the team," Parker instructed. "Create as much chaos as you can. We'll extract the core and meet you at the extraction point." As Sela's group moved out, Parker and his team carefully began the delicate process of disconnecting the data core. The ship shuddered around them, rocked by explosions as the human benzite fleet's attack intensified. "We need to move now," Parker shouted, hefting the volatile data core with the help of a benzite soldier. They raced through the increasingly unstable corridors, the ship groaning and creaking around them. They reunited with Sela's team near the shuttle bay, only to find their escape route blocked by collapsed debris. Without a word, humans and benzites alike began clearing the path, their combined strength making short work of the obstacle. As they boarded their shuttle and launched, the rebel command ship began to break apart behind them. Parker's hands flew over the controls, his piloting skills pushed to the limit as he navigated through the debris field. The advanced benzite navigation systems complemented his human intuition, allowing them to thread the needle between chunks of twisted metal and erupting energy discharges. Just as they cleared the immediate danger, the data core they had stolen suddenly hummed to life. A holographic star map flickered into existence, filling the shuttle's cabin with a ghostly blue light. Parker and Sela leaned in, their eyes widening as they recognized the significance of what they were seeing. "Those are hidden rebel bases," Sela breathed, her finger tracing the patterns of stars and planets. "Spread across the entire galaxy." Parker nodded, his mind already racing with the implications. This could be the key to ending not just this battle, but the entire rebellion. As they approached the Celestial Hammer, the space battle around them began to subside. The combined human benzite fleet, employing Parker's strategy, had broken the back of the rebel forces. Victory was within reach, but both Parker and Sela knew that their journey was just the beginning. Standing together on the shuttle's ramp as it docked with the Celestial Hammer, they watched the last pockets of resistance being mopped up. The data core they had risked everything to obtain held the promise of a lasting peace, but it also represented new challenges and responsibilities. Parker felt Sela's hand slip into his, their fingers intertwining. The touch was both a comfort and a promise. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As they stepped off the ramp and into the bustling hangar bay of the Celestial Hammer, they knew that the future of human-benzite relations rested in no small part on their shoulders. The debriefing that awaited them would be grueling, the political implications of their actions far-reaching. But for now, as they walked side by side towards the war room, Parker and Sela allowed themselves a moment of quiet satisfaction. They had written a new chapter in the history of their peoples, and the story was just the beginning. The war room buzzed with activity as Parker and Sela entered, still bearing the marks of their recent mission. Emperor Zaxthor stood at the center, his posture rigid despite his injuries. As the doors sealed behind them, a palpable tension filled the air. "Commander Parker, Princess Sela," the Emperor's voice carried across the room, "your success has changed the course of this conflict. The data core you've retrieved holds information vital to our victory." With a gesture, Zaxthor activated a holographic display. The star map from the shuttle flickered to life, filling the room with a ghostly blue glow. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the assembled leaders as the extent of the rebel network became clear. As you can see, Zaxathor continued, the rebellion's reach is far greater than we anticipated. This information demands immediate action. Before anyone could respond, the door slid open again. A tall, slender Benzite entered, his skin pulsing with impossibly strong agitation. Emperor Zaxathor nodded in acknowledgement. Ambassador Krelnax, thank you for joining us. Krelnax's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the room, his gaze lingering on Parker. Your Majesty, I must protest. The presence of humans in this meeting is a grave breach of protocol. The information displayed here is classified at the highest levels. Parker felt Sela tense beside him. He placed a hand on her arm, a silent gesture of support. Ambassador, Zaxathor's voice carried a note of warning. Commander Parker's role as special advisor grants him full clearance. His insights have proven invaluable. Krelnax's skin flashed with indignation. With all due respect, Your Majesty, this alliance has already gone too far. Sharing our military secrets with the humans compromises our security and sovereignty. The room erupted into heated debate. Benzite officials argued back and forth, their skin pulsing with a riot of colors. Human representatives raised their voices in protest. Parker stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. Ambassador, I understand your concerns, but this rebellion threatens both our peoples. The intelligence we've gathered proves that the rebels have already merged human and Benzite technologies. Our best chance for victory lies in cooperation. He manipulated the holographic display, highlighting key rebel strongholds. I propose a joint task force, a team of our best operatives, both human and Benzite, to investigate and neutralize these bases. Krelnax opened his mouth to retort, but alarms blared throughout the ship, cutting him off. Lieutenant Vexara burst into the room, her skin pale with urgency. Your Majesty, we're under attack. A rebel fleet just emerged from the nearby nebula. They've caught our defensive lines off guard. The holographic display shifted, showing the unfolding battle. Advanced Benzite warships, bearing rebel markings, tore through the Allied fleet's formation. Several human ships listed, venting atmosphere and debris. Emperor Zaxathor's eyes hardened. He turned to Parker and Sela. It seems the time for debate has passed. Commander Parker, your proposal is approved. Assemble your team immediately. As the room erupted into a flurry of activity, Parker felt Sela's hand slip into his. They shared a look of commitment before springing into action. Over the next few days, Parker and Sela worked tirelessly to form their strike team. They handpicked the best operatives from both species, focusing on those who showed an aptitude for cross-species cooperation. Training was intense and unforgiving. In the ship's cavernous simulation chambers, human and Benzite team members learned to merge their combat styles. Parker's Space Marine tactics blended with Benzite energy manipulation techniques, creating a hybrid fighting force unlike anything seen before. During a rare moment of downtime, Parker and Sela found themselves alone in one of the ship's observation decks. The vastness of space stretched out before them, punctuated by the flashes of distant battles. Sela's skin shimmered with a complex mix of emotions. Anthony, she said softly, using his first name for the first time, do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? This war has already cost so much. Parker turned to her, struck by the vulnerability in her eyes. I do, he admitted. But then I think about what we're fighting for. A future where our peoples can live in peace, where we can learn from each other. He took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt. A future where this, he gestured between them, isn't something extraordinary. Sela's skin flushed with a warm glow. She leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that spoke volumes. As they parted, a comfortable silence settled between them. The moment was shattered by a priority alert from Lieutenant Vexara. They rushed to the main laboratory, where Vexara stood surrounded by holographic schematics. I've cracked it, she announced, her skin pulsing with excitement. The rebels have reverse-engineered human stealth systems and combined them with our energy weapons. It's how they've been able to strike so effectively. Parker studied the schematics, his mind racing with the implications. This changes everything. If we can adapt our own ships with this technology, Sela nodded. It could turn the tide of the war. As they discussed the potential applications, alarms blared once again. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Coordinated terrorist attacks had struck both Earth and key Benzite worlds, targeting symbols of the Alliance. The situation demanded immediate action. Emperor Zaxthor called for an emergency broadcast, his image transmitted to every corner of known space. Citizens of Earth and the Benzite Empire, he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Today we face a threat that knows no borders, no species. In light of this crisis, I hereby recognize Earth as an equal partner in our galactic empire. Gasps echoed through the Celestial Hammer's command center. Parker and Sela exchanged shocked glances as Zaxthor continued. From this day forward, humanity will have full access to Benzite technology and resources. Only through unity can we hope to overcome the challenges that lie ahead. As the broadcast ended, the ship erupted into a mix of celebration and heated debate. But for Parker and Sela, there was no time to process the monumental shift in galactic politics. Their strike team was ready, their first target, a heavily fortified rebel stronghold. As they boarded their stealth shuttle, Parker addressed the team. What we do today will shape the future of two civilizations. Remember your training, trust each other, and we'll make it through this. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, carrying them towards their destiny. As they entered stealth mode, Parker and Sela shared one last look. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Together. The shuttle's sleek hull vibrated as it slipped into the vast expanse of space, its stealth systems engaged to avoid detection. As they navigated through the asteroid field surrounding their target, the ship suddenly lurched violently. Warning alarms blared as the pilot's console lit up with damage reports. "We've been hit," Parker shouted, his hands flying over the controls. "Debris impact. Primary thrusters are offline." Sela leaned forward, her skin pulsing with concern. "Can you land it?" Parker's eyebrows furrowed as he wrestled with the controls. "I'll have to. Hold on tight." The shuttle careened through the asteroid field, narrowly avoiding massive chunks of rock. Parker's years of experience as a space marine came to the fore as he guided the crippled vessel towards a relatively stable asteroid near their target. With a bone-jarring impact, the shuttle skidded across the asteroid's surface, coming to rest precariously close to the edge of a deep crater. As the dust settled, Parker and Sela shared a look of relief. "Nice flying," Sela said, her skin flickering with admiration. Parker nodded grimly. "Thanks, but we're not out of the woods yet. We'll have to spacewalk to the facility." As the team prepared for their perilous journey, a new face joined them in the shuttle's airlock. Dr. Alara Voss, a human xenobiologist with expertise in Benzite physiology, double-checked the seals on her suit. "Remember," she said, her voice crackling over the comm, "the rebels may have biological defenses in place. Stay alert for any unusual readings on your sensors." One by one, they exited the shuttle, tethered together in pairs. Parker and Sela took point, their movements in perfect sync as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Asteroid after asteroid, they made their way across the field. Each jump was a calculated risk, with Parker and Sela working in tandem to guide the team safely. Their bond, forged in battle and deepened by shared experiences, was evident in every coordinated movement. As they approached the rebel facility, hidden within a massive hollowed-out asteroid, Dr. Voss's sensors began to flash urgently. "We've got a problem," she announced. "They've set up a network of gravity generators. We're about to hit areas of crushing force." Parker's mind raced, considering their options. "Any way around it?" Dr. Voss shook her head. "No, but I have an idea. The generators seem to be calibrated for a specific physiology. If we alternate between human and Benzite team members, we might be able to push through." With no other choice, they pressed forward. Parker felt the increased gravity tug at him, threatening to pin him to the asteroid's surface. Just as it became unbearable, Sela moved ahead, her Benzite physiology better suited to withstand the pressure. Step by agonizing step, they made their way through the gravity field, human and benzite working together in a deadly dance of survival. Finally, they reached the facility's outer airlock. As the team caught their breath, Parker outlined the plan. We split into two groups. I'll lead the team to find and disable the superweapon. Sella, you take your group and secure the scientists. Dr. Voss, you're with me. We might need your expertise if we encounter any biological agents. The airlock cycled open, and they moved swiftly into the facility. The corridors were a maze of advanced technology, a disturbing blend of human and benzite design. Parker's team encountered the first sign of trouble in a large laboratory. Specimens and stasis pods lined the walls, each containing what appeared to be a hybrid of human and benzite DNA. They're creating their own soldiers, Dr. Voss whispered, her face pale as she examined a nearby console. Loyal to the rebel cause and potentially more powerful than either of our species alone. Before Parker could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Their presence had been detected. "We need to move now," Parker ordered, leading his team deeper into the complex. Meanwhile, Sela and her group had cornered the lead scientists in a secure research area. As they prepared to make the arrest, a squad of hulking figures emerged from concealed chambers. "Hybrid soldiers," Sela realized, her skin flashing with alarm. "Fall back and regroup." A fierce close-quarters battle erupted. Sela's royal combat training came to the fore as she ducked and weaved, her movements a blur of human agility and benzite precision. Her team fought valiantly, but the hybrid soldiers' enhanced abilities made them formidable opponents. In the weapons chamber, Parker's group finally located the superweapon. The massive device hummed ominously, its core pulsing with unstable energy. "It's already prepped for deployment," one of the technicians reported. "We can't shut it down remotely." Parker's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. There was only one option left, and it was risky. "I'm going in," he announced, moving towards the energy core. "My human nervous system should be able to withstand the radiation long enough to trigger a manual shutdown." Before anyone could protest, Parker plunged into the swirling energy field. Pain lanced through every nerve in his body as he fought his way to the central control panel. With trembling hands, he input the shutdown sequence. The weapon's hum died away, but the damage was done. Parker stumbled out of the core, his skin pale and clammy from radiation exposure. As both teams fought their way back to the extraction point, the facility rocked with explosions. The rebels had initiated a self-destruct sequence. Parker and Sela reunited at the airlock, each supporting the other. Despite their injuries, Parker's radiation sickness and Sela's wounds from the hybrid soldiers, they coordinated the team's escape with practiced efficiency. They reached their damaged shuttle just as the rebel base erupted in a massive fireball. As they limped away from the asteroid field, Parker and Sela found themselves in the medbay, tending to each other's injuries. "You took quite a risk back there," Sela said softly, her skin shimmering with concern as she examined Parker's radiation burns. Parker managed a weak smile. "So did you, taking on those hybrid soldiers. We make quite a team." As the celestial hammer grew larger in the viewport, they knew their ordeal was a long way to go. The superweapon had been neutralized and valuable intelligence secured, but the personal cost had been high. Their success would have far-reaching consequences, both for the war effort and their own intertwined destinies. As the shuttle docked with the celestial hammer, medical teams rushed to meet them. Parker stumbled as he exited the shuttle, his vision blurring. Sela caught him, her own movements stiff and pained. "We need help here," she called out, her skin pulsing with urgency. Dr. Alara Voss pushed through the crowd, her eyes widening as she took in their conditions. "Get them to the advanced medical bay now," she ordered. The next few hours passed in a haze of diagnostic scans and urgent consultations. Parker drifted in and out of consciousness, catching snippets of worried conversations. Mass cellular mutations unlike anything I've seen. Benzite healing techniques aren't working. We're losing them both." Finally, Dr. Voss's face swam into focus above him. "Anthony, can you hear me?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. Parker managed a weak nod. He turned his head slightly, seeing Sela on a nearby bed, her skin a sickly pale blue. Your conditions are critical, Dr. Voss explained. The superweapon's energy has caused unprecedented mutations in your cells, Anthony, and Sella's wounds from the hybrid soldiers are resisting all our treatments. She took a deep breath. I have a proposal, but it's risky. We need to merge aspects of human and benzite physiology to heal you both. Parker's eyes widened. How? He rasped. We'll connect your bodies, allowing you to share vital fluids and energy. It's never been done before, but it's our only option. From across the room, Emperor Zax Thor's hologram flickered to life. The procedure is approved, he announced, his voice heavy. Save them, Doctor. What followed was a blur of activity. Parker felt himself being moved, tubes and wires attached to his body. As the procedure began, he reached out, finding Sella's hand. Their fingers intertwined as a strange warmth spread through him. Suddenly, he wasn't in the medical bay anymore. He was a child on Earth, feeling the sun on his face for the first time. Then he was Sela, undergoing rigorous royal combat training. The visions came faster, a whirlwind of memories and experiences. He saw through Sella's eyes as she left her homeworld for the first time, felt her wonder at the vastness of space. He experienced her first battle, the mix of fear and exhilaration. In turn, Sela lived Parker's life, from his early days in the Space Marine Academy to his first command. As their minds merged, their bodies began to change. Parker felt his skin tingle, taking on a faint blue sheen. Sela's wounds closed, new tissue forming with a mix of human and benzite characteristics. Hours later, Parker opened his eyes. The medical bay came into focus, but everything looked different. Colors were more vivid, and he could perceive energy fields he'd never noticed before. Sela, he called out, his voice stronger than before. She sat up in the bed next to him, her eyes wide with wonder. Anthony, I can feel you. In my mind. Dr. Voss approached, her face a mix of relief and fascination. The procedure was successful, but with unexpected side effects. You've become the first true human benzite hybrids. As they absorbed this news, alarms blared throughout the ship. Lieutenant Vexara's voice came over the intercom. All senior staff to the command center immediately. We've located the rebel stronghold. Despite Dr. Voss's protests, Parker and Sela insisted on joining the briefing. As they entered the command center, all eyes turned to them. Their new appearance, a perfect blend of human and benzite features, caused a ripple of murmurs. Emperor Zax Thor's hologram dominated the center of the room. The rebel base, he announced, is hidden within the accretion disk of a black hole. A holographic display showed the massive space station, nearly invisible against the swirling chaos of the black hole's outer edges. The gravitational forces make it impossible for our ships to approach, Vexara explained, and our weapons would be useless at that range. Parker and Sela exchanged a glance, a spark of understanding passing between them. They stepped forward in unison. We can do it, Parker said. Sela nodded. Our new physiology, we can withstand forces that would crush others. The room erupted in protests and arguments. Earth's representative, Admiral Chen, shook her head. It's too risky. We can't send you on a suicide mission. For hours, the debate raged. Parker and Sela argued passionately, insisting that their unique abilities made them the only choice for this critical mission. Finally, Emperor Zax Thor raised his hand for silence. The mission is approved, he declared, but with one condition. Dr. Voss will accompany you to monitor your condition and search for a way to stabilize your hybrid physiology. As the command center cleared out, Parker, Sela, and Dr. Voss huddled together, discussing the details of their perilous mission. Engineers were already modifying a ship to withstand the extreme conditions they would face. We leave in 6 hours, Parker announced. Get ready. As they prepared, Parker and Sela marveled at their new abilities. They moved with increased speed and agility, their minds working in perfect synchronization. In the ship's training simulator, they flew through scenarios that would have been impossible before. Dr. Voss watched them with a mix of scientific curiosity and concern. Your bodies are still adjusting, she warned. We don't know the long-term effects of this change. As the launch countdown began, Parker took one last look at the celestial hammer. He felt Sela's presence in his mind, a comforting warmth. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The ship's engines roared to life, propelling them towards the accretion disk. As they approached the swirling maelstrom of the black hole, Parker's hands tightened on the controls. The real test was about to begin.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.